So I want to talk about a few things in the starter kit and just kind of walk through some of the ideas. And then if you have any questions about it, I'd be happy to try and answer those. So hi again to everybody. I'm Aino. I'm the admin in this group. I'm a designer with 15 plus years of experience. And tonight I'm going to talk about branding breakthrough and taking your brand to the next level. So let's jump to it right away. Okay, so I created this 17-page branding breakthrough starter kit. It walks through basically 3-phase process of how to take your branding to the next level. There are some exercises there. There are some theory parts there. There are some questions that are going to guide you through some of the process. And then there's also at the very end, there is two tables. One of them is, you can see them here, tiny over here. The first table is about what are the steps within a typical branding process and what does it take to get those right. And then the other table that is kind of as an appendix in the end, that table is about your current state, your brand's current state, and then mirrored for the future state. So we'll take a look at all of those towards the end of this discussion. This workbook or the starter kit is specifically for the moment when your starter brand is not serving your needs anymore. So if you follow me and you've seen any of the presentations or the learning videos in this group, you know that I talk about starter brand. Starter brand is what I lovingly call the first branding that you create for your business when you when you first start out. Quite often we don't know our ideal customer super well in the beginning if you haven't worked with them a lot yet. And we can't, and sometimes it's not even strategically smart to make very specific, super focused branding if you don't know who you're making it for. So typically starter brands are a little bit more broad. They often look professional, but they're not very focused. So this kit is specifically for that moment when you feel like, okay, I need to move to the next level. My business is taking off. I have customers. I work with my ideal customer. Now I know who they are. Now I know what they need. Maybe you've changed your offering a little bit and you are ready to scale. You are ready to move forward. So the 3 parts in this kit, the first one is brand positioning. And brand positioning, and we'll take a look at an example of that a little bit later here. But on high level, what brand positioning is, it's basically how you want to position your business in the marketplace. So an example that I often use is if you want to position yourself as a luxury product versus everyday product, probably your branding is going to be different. So luxury product, you already, when you say that something is luxury, you have an image in your head. Who is the customer? Who is it for? What does it look like? Versus if it's every day, maybe Louis Vuitton versus Target type of situation. So when this entire starter kit, this workbook, starts by analyzing your current positioning. So with your brand, the starter brand that you started your business with, where was it positioned? How is it positioned? And then I'm going to guide you through the process where you're going to envision your dream future. What is the ultimate dream future state for your brand? And it depends how far you want to take this exercise. You can think about it maybe 2 to 5 years from now or 10 years from now. It's all up to you. But I talk about this ultimate dream state. So we'll take it to the next level, the kind of bigger dreams, bigger goals. So let's say that you want to change a little bit of your target market or your kind of who you're offering your services. Maybe you're changing the offering slightly. All those things will affect. And I'm going to walk you through how you can do this analysis of the current positioning and what is your dream positioning and what kind of transition or transformation you're going to have to put your brand through to get to that position. So then the next is, well, I already talked about this a little bit, the level of transformation. So after we've defined what is the future dream positioning, we're going to look at what is the level of transformation. How do you analyze whether it's going to be a big transformation or a small transformation? And then what's the method of execution? So how are you going to get there? What's the best way for you to get yourself there? Okay, so let's talk about the positioning. So here is an example of this positioning grid, competitor matrix, I sometimes call it. And in the workbook, there is a sheet that you can print these grids out, and there is instructions on how to define these different kind of qualifiers or aspects that you're going to compare. But basically, you're going to draw a grid that compares certain qualifiers of your brand as well as those of your competitors to each other. So here I've taken as an example restaurant industry, and I'm comparing to family friendliness versus price. So on one axis, the y-axis, we have family friendly at the top and not so family friendly at the bottom. And on the x-axis, we have low price, which maybe it could be fast food, and then we have high price, which is gourmet. So it's very typical to have sort of low versus high, or some other aspects that are connected but opposing. And that gives you a good sort of grid layout where you're going to start plotting your competitors. So in this map, the gray dots are competitors. They are competitor restaurants that I've identified. And maybe since restaurants are very local, so maybe this is my hometown. The green dot is my current situation. So I've plotted myself here. I am not so family friendly, and I'm on the gourmet side of things, but I'm not very family friendly. After I plotted all my competitors on this map, I see this open area here, which tells me that this is a space where there's less competition. It would be easier for me to stand out. Also, maybe I already know that it is sort of my dream to offer high priced gourmet food in a family-friendly setting. So this will be my dream state, my dream future. And this kind of mapping will help me plot out the new positioning, the current positioning, and then the future positioning. As well, it tells me, I mean, if this was a real actual map, I would write the names of the competitors next here. So then I could also identify, as you see in the future state here, we don't have a whole lot of competition around. It's a more of a blue ocean market there where I can, I don't have so many competition. If I were to land somewhere here, for instance, next to more competition, then having analyzed this entire matrix with competitors on the map, I would also identify my closest competitors, the ones that I really want to keep my eye on, you know, when I'm doing my business. Okay, so this will help me kind of analyze where I'm currently and where I should be. Now, you want to really pay attention to what qualifiers you choose. So you want to choose something that's meaningful for your mission, your vision, your why, and your sort of like your offering. Also something that's meaningful for you and your ideal customer. So I chose family friendly to one and gourmet kitchen to one. And maybe those are things that I know because I'm passionate about, you know, really nice food or fancy food or whatever. And maybe I have a big family and I love kids, and it's pain to go to a restaurant to have really nice meal in a nice restaurant or something like you have a reason. You have to find a reason why you choose these qualifiers. If you randomly pick them, like, it's pretty typical. You see it's like a low price, high price, low quality, high quality, something very super generic. It's not going to be equally efficient for you for plotting this kind of roadmap to your future positioning. Okay, so let's move on. So the next part was the level of transformation. So after you've mapped your current state and the dream state for your brand, where you want to be, or this is for your entire business, where you want your business to be, and then you're going to tailor the brand to help you get there. So that's basically the reason for this strategy. So the level of transformation, you have here facelift versus complete rebranding. So that's kind of a gradient where you go from facelift is what I call facelift is like a, just a small brush up. Maybe you'll update the colors, you do something a little bit to refresh it, to make it more appropriate to your new strategy. Whereas complete rebranding is something where you might reinvent everything. And that's, like I said, it's a sort of you can go anywhere from facelift to complete rebranding or anything in between. So it's not, these are not just the two options, but there could be like a medium rebranding, not complete, but maybe medium rebranding where you change everything else except for the logo. Or maybe the logo exactly is the one you need to change, but not so many other options. So you really have to analyze these things to kind of make sure. And I will show you, and I'll show you kind of how to analyze some of that stuff too. Okay, so how do you know what is the level of transformation you need? Like, do you need a facelift, or are you going to need complete rebranding? So one of the methods here is to actually look at the distance between your current situation and dream future. The rule of thumb is the longer this distance here is, the bigger the transformation is going to be. So if this star would be within this same quadrant here, your brand upgrade or refresh would probably wouldn't have to be so drastic. But since we're really jumping from a different quadrant, we're still staying on one half of this, the same half of the matrix. So it's pretty good, but it's still, this distance is quite long. So it means that, yes, you're probably going to have to change significantly. If you would jump diagonally to a complete different quadrant on a different side of the grid, that would probably be the biggest transformation. So use this grid to kind of help you plot out, like, how far do you move to a different half of the grid, a complete different quadrant, or so forth and so forth. And like I said in the beginning, it's a rule of thumb. Sometimes it's not. So you have to really look at it case by case, because again, it really depends on what are these qualifiers that you've chosen to have here. So if these qualifiers are all very similar, so there's not a lot of different between each end of the axis, then you already know that the transformation is not going to be, you've already kind of selected qualifiers and aspects to compare in this grid, and you're already tailored your entire planning process around the fact that you're probably not looking for such a big transformation. So if you are honest and true to yourself and you find these qualifiers based on where you want your dream state to be and what are those things that are important to you in your business, it'll be this whole distance tells you the level of transformation is going to be more true and more kind of realistic. Okay, so the third thing was method of execution. And the reason I paused there, because I think this is the last slide. Let me peek. Yeah, okay, so this is the last slide. I am going to jump into the actual starter kit real quick. And we'll take a look at that too. And there are a couple of things that I want to point out in that one. But so the last step of the three-step process is the method of execution. So how are you going to get there? How are you going to get your rebranding done? So there's kind of 4 basic options, or any combination of these. And first I have here, hire an agency. So you can, of course, invest and hire a branding agency. And what are some of the pros and cons? The pros are, of course, that you will get a team of very skilled experts. Typically, agencies will have expert copywriter. They'll have someone who's focused on design, someone who's focused on brand strategy. So you will get this sort of entire team of people to work, and each of them have their own specialty. And so when they've been able to focus on just what they do, they've been able to kind of grow these skills that typically, an average person would be hard to find. So that's, of course, really the benefit of hiring an agency. Of course, also the other one is that when you go to an agency who have all these skill sets, you don't have to look around, look around for if you need a copywriter suddenly. They all are going to be in that agency. The cons are going to be that it's going to ask for some budget. So there are, of course, agencies, some will hire vastly more than others, but the rule of thumb will be that if you hire from an agency, you're going to have to be prepared to pay quite a bit. So there's some budget implications there. The other downside, and this is something that I've heard from working with people, is that working with people who have had negative experiences working with agencies, also having worked in multiple agencies myself, there can be times when you might feel like you're not going to have as much influence on the outcome because the agency will have a strong point of view on what your branding should be, or they're going to have a strong point of view on, or strong motivation of some kind for driving a certain strategic brand, direction for your brand. Let's put it that way. And then the other thing is that turnaround times might vary. So you might want something really quickly, but they might have lots of projects in line and you might have to wait. So then the other option, or the next option, would be you could hire a consultant or a freelancer. So again, the pros are that these are people who are specialized, but maybe you hire one person and they can only do, I don't know, design and strategy, but they're not a copywriter. So there are like only so many skill sets that one person can have, or they could claim to have all of those skill sets, but might not still be experts in all of those. Of course, hiring a consultant will also ask for budget, so you have to be prepared to pay quite a bit in there as well. And then, but where I said that with agency, you might have to wait around for a while, or you might have to get on their calendar. And you might not, also one thing with agencies that you might not have full transparency into their process, so you might not always know what they're doing. When you hire a consultant or freelancer, you will have more insight into their process. They'll probably be working more closely with you. So that's definitely a positive thing. But the same with kind of timetables, they might have projects in line, and especially if they are very popular one, you might have to wait for a while. You could also, the third option is to do parts yourself. So you could do the strategy yourself and then hire just a designer to do the parts that you can't, or you could do all of it yourself. So these are basically the methods of execution. Now you might ask, like, can I actually do some of it myself? You might not have expertise in branding. My point of view, and if you're part of this group, you must know this, my point of view is that you can actually do all of it. It's really a matter of if you want to do all of it or not. If you don't want to do all of it, you can do majority of the steps in the process. And at the end of this presentation, I'll show you what the steps are. They're also listed in the starter kit, that what the steps in the process are and what does it take to execute on those successfully. Okay, so let's move on. Here is just a template of showing the grid, and you will have that in the starter kit. So let me now quickly jump here into the starter kit. So one of the things that I wanted to point out was when you are thinking about how do you evaluate the distance or the level of transformation, I said one of the methods would be that you can measure the distance of the starting point and the end point on that matrix. Well, the other one is to ask questions. And I've listed some of these questions in this starter kit. So you kind of start each question that, in my dream future, or the dream future for my brand, is my vision and mission for my business still the same? So are you going to have to change your vision or your mission? Or do you have to update some of the aspects? Maybe you don't change them entirely, maybe you update them slightly. In your dream future, will you still be serving the same customer base? So because we're talking about rebranding, you have experience working with your customers. Is your ideal customer still the same? Or are you gonna update that definition somehow? So now you have worked with your customers, you might know that there are some people that you want to work with more or some people that you want to work with less? Is your offering still the same? So now that you've been working with people and you have more experience running your business, do you feel like you want to upgrade or change some of the parts of your offering or the entire offering to meet the new positioning that you've mapped? So of course, every time you answer these questions that yes, you need to change something, the distance kind of to the, or the level of transformation will grow. So you're slowly or quickly, but bit by bit, you're adding more of the transformation, you're changing more things. And when you change things in your strategy part, you're probably going to end up changing, or it is to make sure that your visual identity reflects the strategy, you're probably going to end up changing a bunch of stuff there too. So then in your future or in your dream future, what are some words that you would use to describe your brand personality? What will be some of the characteristics your branding have to meet or might have to meet the new positioning? And what are some of the things that make your brand, business, and offering unique and different from the competition in that new positioning? So you may have defined some key differentiators, some things that make you unique, and those are all applicable to your current positioning. When you reposition yourself to a different quadrant in your matrix or to a different, position in the marketplace, those same differentiators might not work anymore. So you have to think about it again, like, how am I going to stand out from the competition again? How is the competition going to be different from the competition that I have currently? And what are the things that I have to kind of then bring up more? Okay, so those are some of the things you want to think about. And here in this, you can see that here in this starter kit, I have this workbook sections, questions you can type down. I recommend you print this because let me show, and I'm sorry about the scrolling part. I know it's really sort of annoying to watch on the screen, but I recommend that you print this because I actually have added these templates for the competitor matrix to help you plan or plot out your, map out your current positioning versus your future positioning. And you can see that one letter size paper has 2 grids. So with some of the people that I helped, some of my customers that I helped with branding, we've done multiple matrices. So you don't just have to compare, a couple of things. You can do multiple of these and see which one resonates with you the most. Okay. And then let me, again, sorry about the scrolling. I'm going to go all the way to the end because I promised that we're going to take a look at the steps in the process. So here at the end of this workbook, we have process and actions table. And this table is going to go through each step in the process, and it's in the first column. The next column will tell you what you do or what you do or produce or create during that step, why you need this part, like why is it important to do those, and what kind of skills do you need to accomplish that step. So let's take an example. So for instance, value proposition. So what do you do or produce or create during that step? So you typically define and polish your offering to find the unique value you provide. So that's a fancy way of saying that you're going to find what is the value. You're going to really kind of hone in and sharpen what is the value that your offering brings to your customers. And I often talk about the transition. What is the transformation that you get them through, your clients? Why do you need this part? So we define the transformation or defining the transformation you offer and communicating the value of your offer. So this is, of course, for your marketing. You need to understand, because this is another metaphor you sometimes hear me say is that don't sell drill when what people want is the hole in the wall. So that's kind of the underlining point of it, that don't sell the service or product because what people really are looking for is the transformation at the end. So you need to learn to communicate the value of your offer. And then what does it take to accomplish this step specifically? Well, it requires analyzing your products and your services and then writing down your value proposition. So each of the step in this table, or each of the kind of row in this table, has one step, what you produce during that step, or create or do, and why do you need that part, and what does it take to accomplish that part. And it goes through, as you see, it continues multiple pages, because I've broken this down into small enough pieces, this process, so that you can kind of evaluate whether you have what it takes to execute on that step. So for instance, logo. So there is a listing of what does it take to accomplish, to create, if you want to create your own logo. So it says here that understanding what does it take to accomplish that? Well, understanding your unique needs for the logo. You might end up, buying a ready icon or symbol. You might combine the symbol with text or play with text only logo. You could hire an illustrator to create a custom symbol that you can then combine with text, or hire a designer to do all of it for you. So I've kind of listed all the options that you could do, what you need to do to get a logo done. And lots of steps, from tone of voice, brand fonts, photography styles. It starts here in the beginning with all more like a strategic stuff, and then evolves towards the more visual design things. And then here at the last page, as I mentioned, we also have this table that helps you assess or compare your current situation with the future. So there are different ways of looking at the steps of the brand strategy. So we have questions that you can then, so kind of why are you in business? Your why, the fundamental reason you keep doing business, can be inspired by your origin story, your role and relationship to others, your leadership style, or your core values. So what is your why currently, and what is your why in future, in the new position, in the new your ultimate dream future state? And it could be the same. I'm not saying that it has to change, but this will help you go through some of the brand strategy, trying to figure out whether it will change or not.